welcome back to my studio. I hope you're well. You'll have to excuse my appearance. I haven't been well. After my video on Stephanie's teacup paintings, my partner became sick with COVID. He wasn't too bad to start off with, and the rules in Australia are that as soon as you're positive you need to isolate, and any household members also need to isolate with you. And I was actually quite excited. I thought, oh well, that's great, I'll get 7 straight days in the studio painting and that'll be really fun. Unfortunately, he became quite ill and had me quite worried actually. He's okay now, but of course nursing him I managed to get sick as well. So I really wanted to get painting with you, but my energy levels are not quite there yet. So I thought today's video I'd just run through my most asked questions about the teacup paintings. We'll see how long my voice holds out as well. I'm much improved, I'm much better. We're certainly seeing the worst of it. And anyone else who's had COVID, I really sympathise with you. Wow, it's a really terrible illness, and I hope the world can move past that soon. So anyway, let's talk teacups. So this here is the very first concept drawing that I did. As I've said in previous videos, my visual diary isn't one that's beautiful and has finished pieces. It's really about getting ideas down, working out how things will look. And so this was the very first time I'd put the idea of the teacup down to paper. And originally I thought I would have several layers of resin where the teacup was completely enclosed. But I came to find out that art resin or any resin is very expensive. And I also, as I got to making them, I also really liked, here's a few more drawings. I also really liked how the cup sat out of the surface, and I got that 3D. If I had have completely enclosed it, while this big cube would have been quite lovely, I really liked the fact that I got that 3D, retained that 3D with the cup sitting out, and that it could also be used as a little vase or a little trinket box, things like that. The other question I get asked mostly is, are the cups all the way through the piece? And of course they're not. It's completely in half, and the way they're cut is that I draw a line. You can still see the texture mark perhaps on that. I draw a line around where I want them cut, and then here's some footage of my partner cutting the cups for me. I jokingly call him my studio assistant, but he's been my partner for about 36 years. And he's an absolute whiz. He's the practical side of our relationship, where I come up with these crazy ideas, and then I say to him, okay, I need to cut these teacups. How are we going to do that? How do I get this in half, please? And so far he has never failed me. He's always come up with how to practically put my ideas into practice. So yeah, that's how the cups are cut. No, we don't have a lot of breakages. We've only lost a couple, and the main ones that I've found we've lost are Japanese made cups. Isn't this beautiful? Look at that handle. What we've come to learn with Japanese made cups is the bottom piece, the stand, is in a separate piece to the cup shape. So these ones seem to be formed as one, but the Japanese cups tend to have 2 separate pieces, and so when we're cutting them we lose a lot of the base. They tend to break. So yes, they're cut in half, and I have an absolute stack of halves, because I mostly use the half with the handle still on, and I get of course the other side of the cup that doesn't, and often they've still got a pattern on them, so I will try and use them. yeah, so that's the other half to the cup I showed you, I think, in Stephanie's video. So that's my little collection of half cups. And once the very first layer of resin goes down, the cup is held in that resin, and it is absolute not going anywhere. Remember that these are designed to have boiling hot water poured into them, so they're good, strong things. And the resin, once cured, is absolute solid as well. So one layer, that's stuck well and good. And the cups, I generally have about 3 layers of resin inlaid with paint and papers and things. So when I say paper inlaid, and I have a video on how I make these, I put packing tape, then I soak it in water, and I rub the wet paper off until I'm just left with the single ply that has the colour in the paper. And then I use these to lay in the pieces. And what I love about what it gives me is, because they can become quite see-through, I can pick up what's still in the background. This is a good example if it's focusing. So I'm picking up still the underpainting, so the background painting, picking up what's on the paper, and then I'm laying paint over the top like these pieces here. And so you get, that's what gives me that depth, that 3D. It doesn't look like it would from here, but when I lay the resin over, that's why I started using resin actually, because I was an oil painter and they're pretty toxic things. So I started to play with acrylic paint, but of course acrylic paint does dry quite flat, and I found with the resin it really brought the colour back out and gave me that real richness again, like an oil paint. So that's where resin and I began. And yes, so when I put the resin over this, it really, as you can see, it really picks up the colour in the paper again, but still gives me that transparency where I can see the underpainting. So that's really good fun. And as I've said in previous videos, what I'm going for is like a wallpaper background, and I choose the cup to suit the background paper. So something perhaps like this, and I'll do the first layer of painting. That includes the lace tablecloth, and I have a lot of references that I use for the lace. I sometimes will lay that in the painting, or I use these laces, and I have a lot of doilies and things as well that I use as a reference. And one thing that you might be interested to see that I found when I was searching for these lace trimmings in secondhand stores and vintage stores, I found these absolutely wonderful vintage sleeves. Of course they've discoloured over time. They're so delicate. Look at the work in there. They're just exquisite. I have no idea what I would do with them, but they're just such a beautiful, beautiful piece of history. So a teacup painting first starts with finding a teacup, marking it up and getting it cut, matching a paper to cup. First layer of painting will have the tablecloth, and I will age it a little bit so it looks a bit vintage. So I've kind of browned off the edges. They're a bit like perhaps an old photograph might. First layer of resin goes down, mounting the teacup solid in that first layer. Some stenciling, these transfer papers, a little bit more painting, maybe some floating leaves. This here is some stencil work. This mint green is some stenciling. Another layer of resin over that to seal that. And it helps lift the next layer of painting where I'll put the flowers in. just lifts it off the surface. Again, it's really hard to show in an image. Hopefully you're getting a sense of the depth of that. And then the last layer is the bouquet, the flowers. Sorry about that ring light. And the way I decide about the flowers is they generally just come from memory or an idea. I don't have flowers set up in the studio to paint from. Often inspiration comes from what's actually on the cup. I will replicate and copy that into the bouquet like I did here in Mabel. And other times it's just the colours, but the cup very much speaks to what I end up with sitting in there. I've also played around with pouring resin into the cup and floating little flowers like this, and I sometimes will float flowers on the surface. These little flowers like this. I find these ones work really well. And then I need to do some finishing off where I get some big tools out. And again, there's other videos of this, but because I built a dam wall around the piece to hold the resin on the surface, because the resin is self-leveling, and if I didn't have a dam, it would all eventually just run off the sides and I'd be left with a very, very thin layer. But I tend to lay the layers a few mil thick, so I end up in the end, that's about 3 layers worth there. So this is the board to here, and then this bit here is the resin. So between my fingers there is the amount of resin that's on the piece in 3 layers, so much thicker than you would normally lay resin. And because I have the dam on there, the resin tends to sit up a little bit on the edges, so you get this very sharp edge. So I need to use a sander to sand all of those edges off, and then when you've sanded, it does lose the shine, so then I do paint a little bit of resin back over to finish it off. So I hope that answers some questions, and I really hope to be feeling better and have my energy back and be less breathless, so I'll be able to actually get some painting done with you. I'm really excited about that. So please stay well, and I will see you next time. Bye.